College begins right at contact. As soon as a student or social worker, most like the student, contact our office, we do have a program technician that is dedicated to Guardian Scholars and NextUp in our office, located right outside of my office. We also have a NextUp counseling assistant who works directly with our NextUp students as also support to our program technician as needed. So it starts exactly with the contact to our office, interested to enrolling at Sierra College, wanting to know more about our program. Our program technician begins with a form. We actually have a checklist form that she will then fill out with the student information, even if the student has not completed an application to Sierra College. We have a form where our technician will write the student's name, who contacted our office, what semester they're hoping to attend Sierra. And then the checklist, which she'll then go over with the student either by phone or in person, that says these are the steps to enrollment at Sierra College, and then an appointment to see with me. So if you see on that checklist, that's pretty much what the checklist looks like. Apply to Sierra College. We encourage them to complete the financial aid and the DREAM Act application. We also have encourage them to complete the CHAFE application and then submit the foster youth document to our office. So oftentimes before I, the counselor, see the student, our financial aid technician or our program technician has already gone through some of these things with our students, so she'll mark off areas in which the student has completed or items the student's completed, and then items where there's still some need to be done. So either if the student is booked to see me tomorrow and some of these items aren't checked off, those are just some alerts for me to work on with the student. Okay, let's work on getting your foster youth document. Let's call the ombudsman's office or your social worker probation office, or and then let's work on assessment or financial aid application. So it's just a checklist. It doesn't stop the student from seeing me. It's just a checklist of us to know where the student is in terms of the process of enrollment. And so the last part of that appointment is to hopefully get in to see me so that way we can help prep them with classes to take for the following semester, of course, based on their career goals or academic goals. Next slide, please. So NextUp actually follows the EOPS model, but besides the academic appointment, everything else is the same. The academic appointment is that appointment that begins with them just coming in. Oftentimes, students aren't sure what they want to do, so that academic appointment is what we do to touch them before they're registered. In that academic appointment, I do help them register, and then we have the required intake that officially brings them into our programs. Again, that's just for new scholars only. And then we have the counseling appointment requirements for EOPS, which is first counseling appointment, second counseling appointment, and the third counseling appointment. And I'll go over what we do in each of those contacts in my later slides. Go ahead. So the academic appointment, as I mentioned, is for me to really get to know the student and what the student's goals are in attending Sierra College or attending college. I inform students about the programs here available to them, our degrees and our certificates. And then educate the student on what the education pathways will look like, pending what their goals are. Have a student come in recently say, I want to learn automotive, or I want to get my automotive degree. Unfortunately, we don't have that. But then I later, refer them to the nearby colleges who do offer that program, and also link them to the foster youth liaison on that campus. So these are things that the student and I will talk about in the academic appointment. We create an educational plan for upcoming semesters. So based on their goal, we'll quickly go over some of the classes available to them for the upcoming semester, actually help them select professors, times, and all of that, so the students feel confident that, okay, I have a plan. These are my planned courses. This is what my days will look like in the upcoming semester. If enrollment is already open, I'll help them enroll at that appointment. And then inform students of resources available to them based on their foster youth eligibility and their unmet need. So our Guardian Scholars program, some of you may not know, but we actually provide foster youth services to all foster youth, regardless of age and when they were in care. So based on the information we have from their foster youth document, I will inform them of what resources are available to them. Of course, I'll talk to the NextUp eligible students about NextUp services, and I'll talk about EOPS and Guardian Scholar Services to those who don't qualify. And then we talk about unmet need. Next slide. Then we have our intake appointment, which is exactly our intakes. The intakes for Guardian Scholars and EOPS, NextUp, is all the same. Again, the review of program resources, review and sign mutual responsibility, what the program agrees to provide the student and what the student has to agree to do during the time that we serve them. We create an educational plan based on the student's goal. We normally create a 3-semester plan. And then identify student support system on and off campus. So in that appointment, I would know if a student is linked with or need to be linked with DSPS services, veteran services. I'll also know if students is interested in the Puente program or Emoja program, or if they're part of the athletic team. I'll also know if I'll ask about resources or support services outside of campus. So if they're part of any of our transitional housing programs, or are they part of AB 12, or do they have a probation officer, social worker, do they have CASA workers, do they have legal support, guardians who support them. That's the time we actually talk about that, and we actually have a complete release of info form that I'll have the student complete if they do have someone whom they would like to have access to us, or for us to have access to regarding their journey here at Sierra College. So again, some of the stakeholders on campus and off campus that we mostly work with, these are learning cohorts like the Emoja and Puente, and our RISE, which is our academic support program, as well as DSPS and veterans, and then housing off campus, housing program and ILP programs off campus, our social workers, of course, and our CASAs. Next slide, please. So here's a little breakdown of what we do in our counseling appointments. Once the semester begins, of course, the first counseling appointment is to check in with the student, seeing how things are going, ensure that they understand the support services that's available to them on campus and off campus, and then assessment of student needs, right? Checking in to see if they have their textbooks, checking to make sure that their financial aid is set and ready to be dispersed. If there are any flags, then that's my time to then link them to our financial aid technician to handle that, and hopefully there are no red flags. And so I help them understand how to access their emails, because we only communicate to our students via email, via their student emails. And then by phone, we ensure that their contact information is accurate, that sort of stuff. Second counseling appointment, review current enrolled courses versus the educational plan we created during intake. Update that as needed, review upcoming semester courses, and we actually select the upcoming courses, because the second counseling appointment usually happens right before priority registration, so it's a time as well for us to inform students, hey, priority registration happens on this day or this day. If it's not one of those days, contact our office, and then we complete the registration form. Our program requires that student do a midterm progress report, and so that's a perfect time for me to check in with the student and say, okay, it looks like you've been absent 8 times, you're not passing this class, let's have a discussion. What can we do? Can we save it, or do we need to let it go? Again, so that way we can accurately plan for spring. Third appointment is another review of current enrolled courses, update any educational plan. In my third appointment, I like to create a full-on educational plan from beginning to end. Oftentimes what I find is students are more motivated to get things done, because now they're seeing, okay, if I drop this, I might end up being here a lot longer. So we've reviewed those. We also, by third contact, priority registration probably ended, and so again, looking to make sure that our students are enrolled for the upcoming semester. That's weird. Third contact is not right. Next slide. And then we have as I mentioned earlier, we have our NextUp counseling assistant. This is someone who works very closely with myself and another counselor, as well as the financial aid technician. But she has monthly check-ins with our students, and it's continuous assessment, right, of needs. And what I found with this person in place is that I'm getting a lot of students who will then disclose to her, some of the personal things that they're facing. And so then the NextUp counseling assistant will, chime in and say, okay, let's have you meet with Flo ASAP or your counselor ASAP. Let me see if I can see if they can step out for a minute or have them see you today. So it's constant assessment of needs on campus and off campus, linkage to resources, and then advocacy for the student, teaching the student how to advocate for themselves with different instructors or different resources or avenues. We provide them with financial literacy, so our NextUp counseling assistant will do that one-on-one with the student, or we offer them the workshop that we give our student. And again, come priority registration, it is a requirement for our NextUp students to register during priority reg unless they're transferring, and that is something that they can do with their NextUp counseling assistant or with the counselors. Next slide, please. Another case management tool we have on campus is we have what is called Sierra Connect, which is an early alert. So say, for example, an instructor is concerned about one of the students that's been missing classes or has a very low percentage to passing the course. They'll put in an alert, say, hey, I'm concerned that you missed a certain amount of classes. Please come see me. That same alert comes to me because the student has been identified in our system as a foster youth. And that alert comes to me. I reach out to the student, or the counseling assistant will reach out to the student to see what's going on, if there are resources that we can provide them to help them succeed in the classroom. Oftentimes it's a phone appointment. Sometimes it's an in-person appointment. And then I will then reach back out to the instructor, kind of telling them what is being in the works, or the student plans on seeing them one-on-one, or we are providing the student with tutoring. Another thing is SARS track, right? We have SARS on our system, so it tells us if a student's been MIA. When a student missed a counseling appointment, we reach out to them. Our technicians actually run reports as we get close to deadlines, to reach out to them and say, hey, we haven't seen you in our office. We would love to see you, see how you're doing. So we use that tool for that. Tia mentioned that they use Google Doc to document. For us, we actually have folders. We have physical folders that we write our notes in. I have a form that tracks how many times the student sees me, and then we also have a form that tracks the counseling appointments, counseling assistant for NextUp. So that person marks down if they referred the student to a resource or what resources were given to the student. And I do the same thing on mine, but it's all one folder. So every document goes into this one folder. So if I'm sick, the other counselor picks it up. They can see what I worked on with the student prior to. So that's the case management model here at Sierra College. Again, it's still the folders. We have physical folders. Next slide. And I think that's it. That's my contact information. If you need to get a hold of me to ask about any of the forms that I've shared, or if you have any other particular questions. And I will answer any other questions at the end of our presentation. I believe our next presenter is Veronica Castillo from Cuyamaca. I'll be passing the mic over. Thank you, everyone.
Before she gets started, I have a couple questions about if this will be recorded. This will be recorded. As Flo was speaking, I hit record. So if you had questions or you wanted to share it with your colleagues, it is being recorded, I promise. Sorry, Veronica, I totally cut you off, but it's being recorded. And now, without further ado, Veronica. And I think you might be muted, Veronica. I can't hear you.
This is weird. Hold on.
I can hear you now.
Now you can hear me?
Yes.
I was muted by you. Okay, thank you. Hi, welcome everyone, and thank you, Flo, for your model sharing. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to go over what Cuyamaca NextUp does here on our campus and how we've implemented our case management model. So I am the program assistant here at NextUp, and we have been doing a lot with our students, and I think it's very helpful that a lot of what we've done has been through the use of student voice and student advocacy. So you'll hear me talk a lot about how our students have cultivated a really successful case management model in conjunction with the work of our staff. Next slide. Okay, so this is just a little infographic that I'm going to go over in detail with you. If you have any questions about particular information pertaining to any oval or anything in general, just let me know. But I think for other campuses, the most important thing to understand is that in order for you to conduct successful case management, it's very important that you have buy-in from your campus. So for us, we are very fortunate that both our president and vice president of student services are on board with the work that we're doing. And because of that, that has given us flexibility to be able to do additional work within the campus as well as off the campus for our students regarding case management. From there, we have a culmination of different staff here on campus that help to create the foster youth team meetings, which we have every Tuesday. And this foster youth team meeting includes, once again, NextUp staff that works with our students. We also have another program, Unlimited Potential, which also serves non-KP's foster youth. In addition, they also serve homeless and guardianship students as well. So we have that counselor from that program, and we also have our financial aid advisor, Pam Fleming, who is also a part of this meeting. And this is a meeting that we have every Tuesday for 1 hour. We do information sharing. We go over what might be happening in different programs. We go over what might be happening outside the campus. But it also gives us a time to conduct individual case management around students. So we present, well, I'll just give an example. We had a student a couple of weeks ago who was going through a very dire crisis, and it was becoming life-threatening. And everyone in the foster youth team meeting, and including different departments, had already worked with this student, but there was a lack of streamlined information. So what we did is we came together with the different departments, mental health, student affairs, NextUp financial aid, and we were able to better understand the needs of this student to help us understand what we would need to do in order to intervene. And through this work, we were able to really see him grow from a lot of the issues that he was dealing with. So because we had this system in place, it really allowed us to better know what was bothering him, and also look at it from different lenses because of the different departments that we have. Okay, so that foster youth team meeting, once again, it is very important because it allows for different information sharing. We include different departments. We actually have a vocational fair that we will be doing in conjunction with San Diego Youth Services. So during these meetings, we're able to talk and discuss different ways of how we want to format such things such as the vocational fair. So it's just our time to come together and to really streamline services and do individual case management around different students. And as we go down, you'll see the NextUp and financial aid staff. Once again, that's just the people that are responsible for cultivating that sense of case management on campus. As you go down into the circle, you'll see the stars S1, S2, S3, and S4, and these are basically our students. So what we've done in order to have successful case management with our students, we've taken different approaches with this. We have created different, we'll say different mini professionals on campus. So most of our students are federal work study students, and they have different positions on campus. We have one in admissions and records. We have one in mental health. We also have one in financial aid. And we have a few in EOPS. So what this allows is our students to be able to come to campus and to feel a sense of welcoming, knowing that they're not alone on campus. So when I get a student that comes to me maybe the student might present some sort of registration issues. I would tell the student, go talk to your peer over in admissions and records. Her name is such and such. We'll call her Cindy Lou. Her name is Cindy Lou. She can actually help you. And what that does is it creates a sense of bonding and unity amongst the students, knowing that they don't have to feel left out or alone on the campus. We've taken the term mental health and we've changed it to be a lesser negative connotation. So we put a large emphasis on wellness with our students. And currently we have a couple of students, as I mentioned earlier, in the mental health department. So when students come to us and they present a challenge, maybe emotional distress or suicidal ideation or just anything that they just are just really stressed with and need a little bit more of assistance, we would encourage a student to actually go to that department, meet their peer, and let the peer do an introduction to the staff within the office, and allows them to basically see that, hey, you know, it's okay that I have these problems and I have someone that I can turn to. As you look around the circle, you'll see different little ovals. You see promises to kids, housing, county office of education, ILS services, promises to kids. I actually forgot to put a little oval on the outside to mention different campus departments, but all of these people play a factor. All of these different entities are important to the work that we do, because without them we would not be able to have a robust program. We have about 10 students right now in our NextUp program, but as I've mentioned before, we don't necessarily just operate from a NextUp programmatic perspective. A lot of the work that we do is in conjunction with our Unlimited Potentials program, just because a lot of our students actually end up falling into either one program or the other. So we basically have combine these two programs to function side by side. And these community organizations are actually very instrumental in providing the different resources and services for our students, and we wouldn't be able to do the work without them. So maybe one student might tell me that they need additional resources for transitional housing. Well, I know that if San Diego Youth Services has an opening, all I would have to do is create the referral, or have the student create the referral, turn the referral in, and that student is able to then connect with different staff for housing services. In addition to the circle or the ovals that you guys see around there, I wanted to touch back into the students 1 through student 4. We have created a successful student support model by hosting weekly events for our students. So we have every Friday our Student Social Connect, and what this allows is for our continuing students to come to the office, hang out, build community, unite, but it also allows for ongoing dialogue about what they might be dealing with individually, and to have that peer-to-peer support and engagement to help them, to help support them. Another thing that we have done is, through consent of all of our students, we have been able to create a peer engagement component for the UP and NextUp students. So what that looks like is, we are looking at the different classes on the transcripts, and we are connecting students based upon the shared classes and also based upon the majors. So then students are able to say, hey, I didn't know the student shared this class with me. Okay, let's go do a student study session in the library, or let's go do a student study session at Lestat's Cafe. So having these peer-to-peer components allows for student engagement and allows for, once again, that sense of unity and family. This has been a term that we've heard has been very, very helpful, and we continue to build upon that. And we also, as far as additional case management, we also do follow the model of general EOPS. So all of our students, whether UP or NextUp, have to follow the same rules. They have to do the counseling appointments, progress reports, and we actually have our students only for Up and Next Up, they have to complete 2 different workshops this semester. So these workshops can be anything from personal development, academic, if they have a job and they have to do some sort of professional development with their job. We count anything as workshops because we want to give that sense of autonomy and allow the student to do something that's going to better suit them academically, professionally, or personally. So we follow that model, and we just want to remain in alignment and not necessarily make students feel siloed per se, because we want all of our students to have a sense of unity. In addition, we also do code our students in SARS so that everyone who is setting up these appointments knows who our students are, which allows us to also run reports and look at different data. As part of our on-tape process for all of our students, we originally started with an assessment through the KC Life Skills Foundation, which looked at educational supports and post-secondary educational training. That was a very formal process, but we realized that it was too lengthy, and it really didn't allow for the data that we were looking for. So through the work of Student Voice, we created a lesser formal assessment, which we do with Google Docs, which allows us to look at students and break them down into either Up or Next Up, and then we are able, with that aggregate data, to make better decisions, programmatic decisions based upon the information that we have. So Student Voice has been very instrumental in the work that we do, because we realize that in order to be successful, we need that. And then we also, as far as case management, want our students to know that they can come to us during any time. So we have very flexible office hours. Our SARS system is coded specifically to have Up and Next Up student appointments that no one else is able to fill. So that also allows for different opportunities to run data and reports to see how our students are doing. I know I mentioned earlier too, we also do the progress reports. So the progress reports, what we've seen is that oftentimes when a progress report is turned in, the progress report just gets put into the inbox and it sometimes gets overlooked. So every time a young person, every time a student comes in with their progress report, the progress report, whether Up or Next Up, is given to me. I look at the progress report. I basically, if the student needs to have an intervention, I'll set the appointment for the upcoming couple of days to meet with the counselor. But I'm also going over resource development for the student. So the resource development that we have right now was created in conjunction, once again, with students. We have what is called our resource intake folder, which I will be able to send to you all at a later time. But this resource intake folder is an electronic, and it's also a paper version, which has all the resources necessary for students to succeed here on campus. And it is inclusive of campus-based resources as well as community-based resources. So it has everything from mental health, food insecurities, self-care, academic preparation, whether online or off campus, so the CHEG, and all those other things that students would need to know in order for them to have just that information at hand to make informed decisions. And we also, as far as our students' needs are, we created an online database / archive of various information that students would need to know about ongoingly. So with our Google Forms, we have this, and each area is broken down into different tabs. So we have things for food, we have workshops, we have information about supportive services, maybe low-cost laptop programs, information about social injustice workshops that maybe students might want to attend. So this database allows students to gather information, see what's happening, whether on campus or off campus, and just get connected. And through that, we've seen a lot of students are more aware about what's happening. We also have a social media platform. So on Instagram, we are titled Cuyamaca Up Next Up Squad. Hashtag if you want to find us. But we are titled Up Next Up Squad, and everything we do is put on this particular website, and it allows students just to know what is happening. And we realize that a lot of our young people, they're obviously social media savvy, so it really helps them to, I don't know, feel cool, I guess you can say. So we have that platform as well. In addition, I mean, we just, everything that we do, we're just very intentional about this. So when I get a new student that comes to me and says that they want to be in the program, the very first process that we take is for the student to meet with our financial aid advisor. So the student is required to meet with Pam, because what that allows is for her to determine what type of documentation the student might need, what program the student is going to fall under, and then it allows her to also complete federal financial aid packets, because there's a lot of students that come and they don't know what's required of them, and then they start the academic year and they're not prepared and they're not able to get their aid. So we allow that process to happen first with Pam. Pam will then refer the student to me. When I get the half sheet that determines the program that the student falls under, I'm sitting down with the student, I'm going over the program, I'm allowing the student to ask questions, but I'm intentional about how I'm having this conversation. So often when I know there's going to be a student that comes to me, I am requesting one of my student workers to actually come about 5 or 10 minutes after I have the student in my office. I will have one of my students come to my office and actually physically meet the student. I'll say, oh, hey, Cindy Lou, oh, by the way, this is Eric Johnson, and he's going to be in our program. So then I intentionally get up and walk away for about a few minutes, and they're able to have that dialogue. They're able to have that peer-to-peer engagement. And what that does, what I've seen it do, is it brings a sense of comfort to the student, knowing that, hey, like, you guys are actually really cool, and I think I want to be a part of your program. In addition to being intentional about the work that I do, I also, in my cubicle area, you can actually go to the next slide. In my cubicle, I have put all flyers of events that we've done. So whether it's on-campus events, whether it's off-campus events, whether it's a J-Bay event, whether it's anything that you can think of, I am intentional about what I am creating, because what I've seen is that as we get new students that come into our program, they're sitting down, they're analyzing you, and they want to know, can I trust you? So with the pictures that I have up here, I often get students that say, oh, hey, such and such is in your program? I say, yeah, yeah, or yeah, that person, they actually graduated just last year. And it allows students to see, like, you guys do a lot of fun stuff. Like, I want a piece of the pie. Like, I want to be a part of this. And when they're sitting down and I ask them, okay, now, is this something that you really want to do? Oftentimes I get the yes, and then they're on board with our program. So once again, I'm just very intentional about what I'm doing, who I'm working with, and having that ongoing communication between different departments, because, like I said, that has been the key to creating a lot of the successful outcomes that we've had. And then you can go back to the other slide, the middle one. Yeah, that one. So this is just additional information about our UP and NextUp program. As you can see in the very top left-hand corner, like I said, when we have our Student Social Connects, students are coming, they're meeting with one another, and because we also have our mentorship component to our program, this is also a time where mentors can have one-on-one conversations with their mentees, and if any problems are being presented, they can also come to me and things like that. And the top right-hand corner, there is a student study session, and that is at our Lestats Cafe, which is 24 hours, and students through this experience have created instrumental relationships and feeling a sense of peer engagement. On the very bottom, that's our EOPS 50th anniversary, and then on the bottom right-hand side, students who have graduated. I also wanted to mention that another thing that we do to create case management on our campus is provide ongoing supportive services. So all of our students are eligible for meal tickets, gas cards, gift cards, you name it. And through these open office hours, that allows students to quickly drop in, ask for supportive services, but they also, as they see that they're getting these supportive services, are more inclined to share, like, hey, like, I'm going through this situation right now. What would you recommend? And with me, I'm able to either refer out to counseling, PAM, various entities on or off campus. So it is a lot of work. You do have to put in the work. We do not have a NextUp coordinator right now. We only have a NextUp counselor. We have one UP counselor, and we have financial aid, and then also me, the program assistant. And so there's a lot of work and energy that goes into this, because what we've seen is that you cannot necessarily serve one population of students without serving the other, because they all fall into the same category some way, shape, or form. And just last year we had 9 students graduate from Cuyamaca Up NextUp, and are all at 4-year universities. So through this work, we've seen that case management is very instrumental, and student voice is key if you want to have a successful case management model.
All right. Thank you so much, Veronica. That's amazing information. You guys are doing some really great stuff. Thank you so much, Flo, for asking for just everything that you guys are doing. I'm excited. I love listening to both of you guys talk about your programs. We did get a couple questions that were coming in. I know Norco had asked a question, and if you're able to unmute yourself, I think it's more effective if you actually are able to ask that question. So if you can unmute yourself, Norco College, and ask the question that you had asked earlier. I believe it was when Flo was presenting. That would be great. And I believe that Colleen also had a question. And also, if you just, as you're sitting there and you're like reflecting back on the presentation, if you had a question as well, please go ahead and unmute yourselves. So Norco, unmute yourself if you can, and Colleen, unmute yourself if you can. I think Colleen just unmuted herself. So go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so while Norco gets themselves unmuted, so 2 questions I had, Veronica. You mentioned a database that the students can use. I think that this is what I heard, to log in and to find out about activities and resources. Did I hear that part correctly?
Correct.
And is there a name for that database?
We just named it Up NextUp database. Okay.
And how does that database get populated?
As far as like
events or resources, is it one of your staff that?
Yeah, so I oversee the database. I update it every day. Okay. Because we have it broken down into the months and days of activities. Okay. So that's how the first half of it starts out. And then as you continue down below, you're able to see the different events or workshops that are surrounding all that information within that calendar.
I'm curious, maybe others are using a similar kind of database, but it would be lovely to be able to take a peek at it if that's possible. I mean, not right here and now, not right now, but
yeah,
sounds like a great resource for students.
Yeah, and you know, I get some students that will come in sometimes and they'll ask questions, and my first response is, well, did you check the database? Yep. Because, you know, the information is there. Because what we want to do is we want to constantly encourage autonomy and independence within our program. One thing that I've mentioned to my students is that when you're a new student, I will hold your hand for the first semester. But by semester 2 and semester 3, you'll start to feel me back off, and I already have high expectations of you. So you should already be familiar, because we're going to have other students coming in, and you're going to be a role model. So you want to definitely start gaining that sense of independence, so that way you can encourage oncoming students.
Right. And then my second question is, how is the UP program funded? Is
the UP
it
program
funded
is
through
funded
equity?
We recently just got some funds from student equity, but before we were operating solely off of donations.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see that Norco has unmuted themselves. If you wanted to ask your question, go ahead.
I figured out how to do it. Sorry. Thank you for presenting. I don't know if I missed it in the beginning about intake, but I know that there's an intake process. So I'm just curious who they do an intake with. 'Cause I know students can probably disclose, sensitive, confidential information. And so do you have a success coach or an advisor or someone that does the intake, or is it an administrative assistant staff?
I'm sorry, I could barely
I
hear.
couldn't hear.
It sounded like, and Norco, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like you had asked who is doing intake, especially if they are, most of the time they're sharing very sensitive information. So is it a counseling staff? Is it a program assistant staff? Is it a combination of the two? Did I represent that correctly, Norco?
Yeah.
So at Sierra College, the counselor does the intake. So the initial information, assessments, all of that is done with the counselor. Now, ongoing, we do have a counseling assistant who just, check in with the student. How you feeling? How are you? Are there any issues with off campus, on campus? Are there any resources you may need? In that time, personal information will come up, or sensitive or personal crisis could occur or be disclosed. And so our counseling assistant is really good about, transitioning the student back then to a counselor. So she'll either reach out to myself or the other NextUp counselor to be able to see a student.
And for Cuyamaca College, the initial intake is oftentimes done by me, but what we've done is we do not want our students to make any irrational decisions. So we have a preliminary intake where the student is able to once meet with Pam to go over federal financial aid to determine how much they would be able to receive, just all the information around that, making sure they have a successful financial aid packet. And then the student is then referred to the counselor to create a preliminary educational plan. So that way the student can make informed decisions about, do I really want to do this? Is this possible? When the student is done meeting with the counselor, the student will then come to me. I'll ask the student, okay, so is this something that you want to do? Do you see yourself being here on campus with all the information that you have? Do you want to make this choice? And oftentimes I'll get students that will say yes. And so then at that moment, we are registering the students for classes, making sure they have whatever resources they might need pertaining to books or additional class materials. Because what we've seen is from observation and from past experiences, students will jump into classes, they'll have their classes that they want to do, and they don't perform as well because they didn't realize the amount of work that it would take to actually do well academically. So then they would drop their classes by census day or by the end of the first month, and then they're not doing so well. So like I mentioned earlier, having this preliminary educational plan to determine whether or not they want to do this, and having the ongoing support from student peers, encouraging them and having that information sharing, understanding that, confidentiality is key. We respect that as well. But the process that we've taken allows us to better serve the students in a more informative manner. So once again, the intake is done by all three because we wouldn't be able to function properly if we didn't do that process.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even unmuted. Veronica, I think that, Eddie, it looks like you're already unmuted. So you want to ask her question?
I just saw you.
What was your question, Eddie?
Hernandez?
No? Okay, good talk. It looks like he had asked how many are, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, the question is, I think just reading the chat box.
Oh, there we go.
Is how many meal vouchers, or how frequent are you giving meal vouchers, and what's the dollar amount of the meal vouchers? And I think this was a question for Veronica, but maybe it's for both.
Yeah, so Our students, we have an unlimited amount of meal tickets that students are able to get anytime during the week, but often I get a student that might come in once a week, and I'm providing them 5 meal tickets, and the increments range between $6 to $10. Normally when we have students that come in, they come in together, so you know, it's kind of like that peer-to-peer, like, oh, we're going to go have lunch together. Or if I have a student that comes in and they just want a meal ticket, I might ask them, are you going to go to the Queen Maca barbecue? If so, oh, all your peers are going to be there. Make sure you touch bases with them. Like, you know, so being intentional about making sure that it's not necessarily just a transaction, but a rewarding experience.
So at Sierra College, because all of our NextUp students are EOPS students, they get what our EOPS general students get, which is a $100 gift card that they can use at our cafeteria or our cafe. So it's $100 per semester. In addition to that, though, NextUp have purchased $50 meal cards that students can ask for as needed. And of course, all of these things get awarded in their financial aid package. So whenever a student is requesting an additional card, then our NextUp counseling assistant will then inform our financial aid technician that says, hey, I gave a student a meal card who asked for an additional card because they're hungry in the mid-semester. In addition to that, though, our students do get grocery cards every month, every time they're checking in with our NextUp counseling assistant. So our NextUp counseling assistant does a lot of the disbursement with our students. Every time the student is checking in, they get their $500 Unmet need grant and a $100 grocery card and a $100 gas card every month.
Nice. Rebecca, it looks like you had a question in regards to tracking students. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know what each college does in terms of how they're keeping track of students who end up dropping all their courses throughout the semester, and like which position within the program is actually tracking that. And also how many students are in the program at both Sierra and Cuyamaca.
So for Cuyamaca, are you asking that question in just regards to NextUp, or did you also want the?
It could be for both. It doesn't matter.
Okay, so right now for fall 2019, we have a total of 10 students. In our UP program, we have 36. And for tracking that information regarding students who drop and so forth, that usually falls on the responsibility of me. Every few weeks, I'm running academic transcripts because what I want to do is I want to first make sure that the students are staying enrolled, because sometimes I'll get students that I'll get an email from them and it's like, oh, you know, I'm not doing so well. I'm thinking about dropping my classes. And at that moment, I'm like thinking, okay, well, let me see if you actually did. So I'm doing, once again, follow-up to look at those transcripts and to make sure that students are doing well academically. And with that, I'm able to make informed decisions about how to proceed with the student, to check in, follow up, and so forth. I get some students that might think about wanting to drop. Like I just had this situation yesterday. I had a student come to contact me and said that they were overwhelmed with the level of work that one class was requiring of them, and they wanted to drop. And I said, okay, based upon what you're saying, these are the things that can happen. So the student came in. One of our other students, who is also a student worker in admissions and records, was here, and they were able to have that peer-to-peer talk about like what could happen and how it would impact financial aid and so forth. So I think having that information helped the student to better understand, like, if I do this, this is how it's going to affect me in the long run. I also, as a foster youth alumni and alumni of Cuyamaca and SDSU, I am very transparent in my experiences and how my education and my personal life was shaped because of the work that I'm doing and because of my experiences as a student. So a lot of my students, when they come and they present certain issues, I really help them to look at the long-term impact of the decisions that they choose to make as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Sierra College, who manages the dropping, adding, that's a counselor. Students can share with our NextUp counseling assistant that, hey, they're struggling, and I want to drop this class, or I haven't been able to go because of I've been ill and been missing classes, they can share that with our NextUp counseling system, which oftentimes happen, and then our NextUp counseling assistant will then say, okay, you got to set up an appointment with your counselor and express those concerns that you're having, those barriers that you're having with your classes with your counselor. It is part of our mutual responsibility agreement that the student inform us before they add or drop a course. So, they're reminded of that, and so then they make an appointment with one of us, and we discuss, again, pretty much what Veronica mentioned, the consequences of dropping courses. So we can talk about financial aid, how that impacts financial aid, how it impacts if they're already on academic probation or progress probation. So those are the things that the counselor will go over with the student. Again, offer any support, and then definitely go with what the student is more comfortable with. Again, their well-being is important, so we either drop it, but the counselor will notate that, because at the end of the semester, when we're reviewing files on who continues and who gets placed on probation or who's dismissed based on progress, it really falls on the counselor then who created or made the plan with the student. It comes back to me pretty much, the coordinator to review files, and if I've okayed a student to drop units, then oftentimes the student will be placed on probation the next semester. In terms of how many students we serve, overall we serve about 153 in both Guardian Scholars and NextUp, but 83 of those are NextUp. And somebody asked about the unmet need grants. Sierra College gives it to our students every month. So the 500 unmet need grant is every month.
Cuyamaca also does the unmet need grant, and the unmet need grant is dispersed based upon the completion of their academic requirements. So every time they complete a counseling appointment, we only require 2 counseling appointments. We decided to switch from 3 because we realized that it was actually a little bit more overwhelming, so they have to do 2. However, they can come in to see academic counselors on a need basis, but of those needs, they have to have at least 2 be counted as EOPS contacts with the counselor as well. And just to reiterate, even though a student might present a challenge of wanting to drop a class, at all times we constantly refer the student to make those informed decisions with the NextUp counselor.
All awesome, really great information. It sounds like, so we originally planned to have breakout rooms, but it sounds like it's way more valuable to actually just continue with questions. If I can get a few people to put a yes or no in the chat. I want to make sure that I am being reflective of our audience here. Okay, excellent. I see that Kim has her hand up, although I saw that Eddie also just unmuted himself. Kim, go ahead and ask your question because you've had your hand up for a couple minutes. Kimberly over at Norco. And we also have a couple questions about Norco's app. People seem to be real jazzed about this app that has popped into the chat.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yay. Okay, so I was wondering about the case management services you provide to your high schoolers as they're coming into the college. Do you start that at the time of application for your seniors, or do you wait till they're actually at the college?
So for Cuyamaca, no, we don't necessarily wait until they're at the college, because what we have seen is that in order to create successful buy-in from the high school students, they have to feel like they're a part of something. They oftentimes will have to wait a full year from high school to actually come and experience the college for themselves. So what we do is we have college fair days where the students can come. We also are inviting those potential students. So we'll get information from the San Diego County Office of Education to do workshops at different high schools. And at that time, we're also able to capture information about students that might be potentially interested in attending some of our events. Knowing that some of these students are minors and so forth, we're very careful about how we proceed. But with that, we are also cognizant that we want students to be a part of our program. So we're inviting them to different student gathering events, whether it's, hey, we're going to go have this, social connect on this day. If you want, you're more than welcome to come and meet who your potential peers are going to be. And normally through those type of contacts, students are, like, once again, they feel that sense of unity and they feel that sense of connection. So they want that experience ongoing, so that usually helps them to want to actually proceed with being a student in Queen Maca's programs.
In terms of Sierra College, our program, or which myself or our program technician, we often we collaborate very well with our PCOE, which is the Placer County of Education, as well as Sacramento County of Education. We also have monthly advisory meetings that bring in, that invites in our social workers, probation officers, sometimes child attorneys, CASA workers, so on and so forth. So they know how our program works and what the matriculation looks like for foster youth stepping onto Sierra College. So when they know this information, they oftentimes, if they have a student that's in high school currently, they will direct them directly to our office instead of having them go through our high school transition counselors. So again, if they know a student is interested in Sierra College and there are a current or former foster youth, they're often given the information to make the appointment with our office. And then we do all that work with them. But sometimes we do have students who meet with our transition counselors, and our transition counselors in high schools are also informed about our program, and it'll say on their student educational plan, please make contact with Brittany Slate, who is our program technician, to connect them to foster youth resources. So that's how that works. Okay.
Thank you so much. I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen, but we are absolutely, Eddie, go ahead and ask your question.
So my question is really kind of about this case management of students. So we kind of have been doing a similar making connections with students. So we're meeting at least 3 times a semester. So kind of with that EOPS requirement, but we're also adding in a added gift card. So for both our KFEs and non-KFEs youth. And so it's a great way for youth to meet with me, kind of talk about where they're at. You know, we talk about, you know, some things about, you know, what, where they're at in their college, like do they have financial aid documents in, do they have everything they need in, so DSPS. And we talk about adulting, so things about, you know, finances, housing. We got a pretty long list of stuff. But my main concern here is how do we track this? Like, how do we track our interactions with students? So right now we have an ongoing shared document on Excel through our Outlook portal, and I don't know, it just kind of becomes becomes cumbersome with like how long this spreadsheet is, and then kind of adding notes to each one, you know. So I just kind of want to know, kind of put it out there for the group, like what is the other group doing? I think who was it that said that they used folders. I don't know how I feel about, you know, keeping a lot of folders, especially with our demographic, right? These students are so used to having records and folders about themselves, right? And so I break out a folder, and then they, you know, I don't necessarily want them to kind of stop talking to me and say, well, you know, you're just tracking me, and then that kind of ends the relationship.
Valid.
Yeah, Sierra College, we haven't found a way yet, because Sierra College is constantly creating things, like same with this app, right? So there's already a Sierra College app where students are engaging, and so it's hard for us to kind of create something that not so much compete, but can overwhelm a student within terms of communications and stuff like that. So we haven't figured that part out, and the same with the folder, right? We haven't been able to really move into a different model yet in terms of case managing, because we got to figure out something that will truly work for our student. Again, our college has a tool already, which is we call Sierra Connect. The issue we're finding with that is the confidentiality, right? Who can these notes and so on and so forth. So right now, that's the only way we can track. We're tracking it is through our folders. But yeah, we haven't figured that part out. But I get your frustration.
Thank you for that, Sierra. College. Yeah, well, we have SARS, so we haven't quite adopted that platform yet.
And we have that too, right? And so we don't know yet how can we use that. But our general counseling is actually using SARS currently. But they're now trying to move our general counsel to using Sierra Connect more, and we haven't figured that out yet.
Okay.
Yeah, Cuyamaca, what we've done, we are planning on moving to a to a more streamlined process for like making everything paperless. But of course that's in the works and that's going to take some time. But as far as trying not to overwhelm the student, we stick with the files because we have over 1,000 students in our EOPS program, and it's a lot of information for our counselors to have to go through. And before we had coded files, students were getting mixed up, files were getting purged, and we just realized that not having coded files was not helpful to track our students. So we have these coded files, but when we're meeting with our students, we're not necessarily sitting down with the file open, having conversations. It's more of we're intentional that like we're going to give you our time because we're really adamant about hearing what you have to say, and we can do all the other additional paperwork later. Of course, if the counselor's meeting with the student and she needs to go over educational planning, she'll obviously have that form in front of her so she can explain as she's talking with the students. But we're very intentional with who we're meeting with, just because we want to know that we are understanding of the different students that we're working with. So yes, so we are trying to create better models of within EOPS for our UP and NextUp students, but then again through continuous quality improvement we'll be able to do that over time. But right now we're going to stick with the folders that we have, and of course once again making sure that we're giving students our full-fledged valuable time and having flexible open office hours that students can come in order to get what they need.
Thank you.
Colleen, did you want to address the question that was in the chat box from Jacqueline? And thank you, Jacqueline, for asking that question, and Flo for bringing it back.
Hi there. So there's a question that came in the chat box that's specifically saying, isn't it true NextUp students cannot be removed or placed on program probation? The only way to remove them is if they age out. And so the answer to this is there are special provisions in Title V that say a student cannot lose their BOG fee waiver or their California College Promise fee waiver. And this was thanks to legislation that JBay pushed, that they couldn't lose their BOG if they were not meeting if they weren't meeting SAP for at least 2 semesters, and that there had to be a special provision for them around appeals process. What it says in Title V for CAFES, so that is to make sure that they don't lose their fee waiver, and that was really important legislation to get pushed through. In terms of CAFES, the same philosophy applies, that we're not looking to kick students out of the program because of unmet academic progress. The goal is to work with the students, and you guys know this because you're doing it. The goal is to work with the students to figure out what they need so they can be retained in the program and continue to progress academically. But to say that you, quote unquote, can't remove them, that's not quite accurate. So if you're working with a student and they are truly trying to make progress and you're working with them to help them to continue to make progress, that's the trajectory you want to stay on. If a student is not, semester over semester over semester is not adhering to what's in their mutual responsibility contract, if they're not taking seriously their academic pursuits, if they're not checking in with you, you do have jurisdiction to excuse a student from participating, right? So it's both. The goal is not to kick students out. We don't want to kick students out. The goal is to keep supporting them such that they can be successful and help counsel them to get them into a position where they will be successful and they can continue to matriculate in the program. And so it's both things. If a student is not doing due diligence to what they've signed up to do, and semester over semester that is the case, then NextUp faculty and staff, as is the case with EOPS, you have jurisdiction to remove somebody from a program. We don't want you to, but if you see a student is really, really not taking, so, you know, in an ideal world, you don't have a young person who's coming to get all the resources, which that's what they're there for them. But if they take the resources and don't go to class and they don't come for their contacts and they do this semester over semester, you have jurisdiction to remove them from the program. Is that a helpful way to frame the answer?
Yes.
I mean, that's, so practitioners, you know, those of you who have been running the program for a while, you know, how do you navigate that? You know, it's a balance between wanting to support these young people and wanting to give the resources that are there for them. But what if the student is not taking, and I understand in spades the very critical things that are happening for them, but what is your approach semester over semester over semester? And again, this is really for folks that have been working with students, you know, for years, or, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 years. What's your approach to when a student is not meeting the goals and adhering to what's in their mutual responsibility contract?
So I'm just going to say what my team has always said. If they're not being productive in the long run, it's going to come back and affect them. So we've had students in the program that were not being productive. And they know that in order for them to receive the different services, the supports, and so forth, that they have to adhere to our MRC. The MRC, once again, I let them know this is going to bind you to the program. Granted, it is voluntary, and as you sign and as you initial on these lines, I want you to fully read what this states. We revised our EOPS MRC for our NextUp students, so we have what's called the NextUp MRC. It's a front and back page, and on the back page it has a quick little snapshot of the general EOPS MRC. So it's a little bit more tailored to fit the information for our specific program. So our students, when they sign that, I reiterate to them that this is what's going to happen if you're going to be in our program, and if you choose, or if you fail to do these things, you will lose out on services. We had a student not too long, actually I would say we had about 4 students in the last couple of years or so that were not doing anything, and because we have the NextUp grant, those students were ineligible. I had a student not too long ago literally tried to debate with me as to how, like, why he feels he should get the resource for the Unmet Need grant. And I'm like, well, you're not going to any of your classes. Your progress reports show that, you know, like you're not passing, like your professor is saying you're not showing up, you know, and unfortunately we can't, you know, provide you with what we said we would provide you with, because it's indicative of you actually being productive. And because the student had failed different classes in prior semesters, the student was no longer eligible for federal financial aid. So the student started to see how his lack of productivity was actually catching up to him and actually doing him more harm than more good. And I think just being realistic with the student helps them to see, okay, well, it might be better for me to take some time off and to focus on my own individual needs before I can worry about academics, because I'm not going to get what I need because I'm not doing what I must, because life is coming at me and I just don't have the time to devote. So regardless, I think it's important to know that you can do all you can on your end, but there's going to be other consequences when the students are failing to meet the program requirements. So I think as long as you're honest and upfront with them about what that looks like, and then having that MRC to be able to go back to and say, this is what you signed up for. This is what you said that you would do, and you're not adhering, and these are the consequences. If not, that MRC is not only protecting you, but it's also showing them and having them see, oh, I did say that. Well, okay, I think I'll just take some time and work on myself.
Yeah, with Sierra College, we have the Guardian Scholars Program, which is fully funded under equity. So when students have continuously not meet the requirement, again, we want to uphold the EOPS, right? Want to make sure that students are following through with responsibility. This is our agreement. You agreed to these terms. And then constantly informing students, of course. The monthly check-in is always assess the needs of students, which is great for us because we can document what the students is, what the barriers are for the student. And sometimes those barriers we know, okay, let's give this student another chance. In our programs, we give a student one probation, and we inform them, you are currently on probation, so let's rock out this next semester. If that happens again, what has gone on throughout the semester. Sometimes we do continue the student for probation too, and sometimes we terminate them in the NextUp program. However, students know that they will never lose Guardian Scholars. We don't base our eligibility off of, the SAP. It's really about let's get you through college. What that looks like for the student is a reduction of services. They will still have, they keep the same counselor, which is myself. They will not have the Unmet need grant because Guardian Scholars don't give out Unmet need grants, but we still give the students the basic needs, right? Book assistance. We do still give a student a gas card. We do still give a student a grocery card and a meal card to have on campus. However, they're actually a lot less than what we give our NextUp students. Our NextUp students get these things monthly. We give it our Guardian Scholar students only once a semester. So that's a huge difference in our student. But again, we want to make sure that all students get at least the basic, which is their academic. They still have access to a computer. They still have access to a financial aid technician, and they still have access to a counselor. So that's what the differences look like for a student who is not progressing in what we are hoping for them to do. But again, and once they're terminated from the NextUp program, they continue their services within Guardian Scholars, which they receive the similar services but less. Then we help them reapply back into the NextUp program the following term.
Is it okay if I just make one qualifying statement? The goal is to keep the students in the program, and what I'm talking about in terms of having people excused from the program or dismissed from the program is people who really, young people who are not participating and not taking it seriously. But our overarching goal is to try to keep these students in the program and on track. So we wouldn't want to, for some other administrative purpose, to kick them out. But I'm talking about students who are not showing up to class and aren't checking in. And I just think it's important that our overarching sentiment is that we do everything, that you guys do everything you can to keep them in.
Mm-hmm. Our model for Cuyamaca is once a NextUp student, always a NextUp student. But failure to abide by program requirements, as Flo mentioned, is obviously going to result in a reduction of services. And oftentimes these services are really what help to create persistence and self-sustainability as a college student at Cuyamaca. And so when they realize that, oh, I'm not going to be able to get that anymore, okay, I need to change my approach. But the student can always come to see a counselor. They can always come to chat with me. If they need to seek financial aid assistance, they can always go to our financial aid advisor. So that will always be there for them up until 26, and then they would obviously have to go through a general EOPS, or the UP program. So we're very cognizant that we're not going to terminate you, but just to be honest with you, you know, there's a difference between love and tough love, and you're going to get the tough love because I think a lot of people, when it comes to these particular demographic of students, are afraid to have those tough conversations, and that's where I come in, is I just keep it real, raw, and honest. Like, look, like you're saying that you want to do this, well, let me just explain to you real life circumstances and real life situations outside of college. This is what might happen, and this is how your potential trajectory of like life can happen. You know, like I mentioned earlier, I'm very transparent with my life, of course, within boundary setting, and so I think as long as I'm honest and genuine in my approach, and I understand where the student is coming from, and this goes for our whole team as well, not just me. When we have that understanding, I think it really helps to cultivate a better sense of for the student to know, like, okay, maybe I need to take a different approach. Maybe school right now is not for me because I'm just really not ready. And so I just wanted to throw a little bit of that information out there.
Cool. Looks like we have 2 more minutes. If there are any other lingering questions, I want to make sure that we are respectful of time. I feel like we could probably talk about this for another 3 hours.
I know. Vance just said, you know, pretty much the same thing, that his understanding was the KFE's regulation. Students cannot be dismissed due to lack of academic progress alone. I think that would be a good discussion to have with J-Bay and Chancellor's office.
Colleen, did you want to
Identify those
address
things.
Vance's comment, or do we
Yeah,
need to?
I can provide, you know, what's currently in statute, you know, to the group. I think our mantra is keep them in, and this idea of not being able to dismiss them, I just want to have clarity that as it stands, we want you to keep them in. I can send out the guidebook and everyone can take a look at what it says. But ultimately, you do have jurisdiction if a student is semester over semester over semester. You have, and we're not encouraging this, and it's sort of anti how I think, but you do have jurisdiction to release them at least temporarily from the program. So you know, it's sort of what's in writing versus, I mean, they are subject to what's in their mutual responsibility contract, and so it's about finding a balance. And I think Veronica really spoke to it very nicely, that if you are going semester over semester and you screw up your financial aid, so even though there's a provision for the BOG, right, then that's great. And that same provision is essentially applied to NextUp that says you can't automatically kick them out after 1 semester of not making SAP. That doesn't go on year after year. That provision isn't there that says that you cannot. If a student is failing out and isn't going to class for 3 or 4 semesters, you're not obligated to keep giving them resources until they get back on track, right? So,
But I think KFEs can definitely be very creative and unique in each college, whatever works for their college, right? See, for us, at least we have the Guardian Scholars as that safety net for these foster youth, but if your program doesn't have it, what can the KFEs program do to kind of assist these students still, not lose connection with them, but perhaps adjust their unmet need or adjust their resources, because we don't want to lose them. We want to continue to encourage them. But again, the program is the way it is, and I believe that, you know, the grant, or not the grant, but the funding was given to help and enhance the resources for these students' needs, to meet these students' needs. Now, if we're doing that and there is no progress, then what are we saying? And I think that's what we need to inform our students. Look, we are providing you some of these unmet needs for you, or resources, but if you're not progressing at all, then what is your ultimate goal? What is the goal? And then maybe help them reach that goal, whatever it is. It may be getting a full-time job or stabilizing elsewhere. We just assist them through that.
I would say that the advantage for at least my interpretation of it is that they can't be dismissed for lack of academic progress alone. I'd have to look at the regulations, but the benefit for that is a student that you have that has had a series of unfortunate events, but they're a capable student. They're still checking in. They still care about their education.
Yeah.
They're not doing well. And if they have no financial aid, they have like zero incentive. It's like going to work and not getting paid. So if we can still provide some financial support for them, then that may be the thing that gets them to have their first successful semester here at the college. So
I think it comes down to your professional judgment. You know, everyone has their own thing, but just because our students has been terminated from financial aid, we continue to serve them. So, yeah.
Yeah, likewise, MAGA does the exact same thing, just in a very minimal matter. And I think what has helped us to be able to be successful in this is knowing that all of the staff members involved share the same philosophy and vision for student success. So everyone's on board. Like I said, with the Foster U team meeting that we have every Tuesday, we are successful because we're very intentional about how we're building these programs, how we're serving our students, and so everyone on board can reiterate the same narrative to our students. But like I mentioned earlier, and I'll continue to mention time and time again, is that it really comes down to your students. If you cultivate an environment or a program of students that also share that same vision, and you have students that are successful in the work that they're doing, and you leverage your alumni, you're more likely to have students who are willing and to not only share, but to express their challenges and just be authentic and real with the things that they're going through. So I really want to encourage you, if you don't have student workers, if you don't have students like a board or a club or something, or a way for your students to connect and to meet, that is going to be very, very instrumental in the work that you're doing and student success. So I really want to push for that. Thank you.
Sweet. So in the essence of time, thank you so much everyone for your participation. I'm really happy that we were able to have this conversation again. I initially planned for small breakout rooms, but sometimes you just got to pivot, which is what you got to do with your students. So thank you so much for a fruitful conversation. And yeah, this is being recorded again. Thank you everyone for reminding me to record it. And I will talk to everyone hopefully at Blueprint soon, coming in a couple weeks. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.